Sorry, just clicking record.
Glad you remembered. Lovely. So thanks, Mel. Yeah, we're here for the Meet the Funder event, Making a Difference in Powys. We've had a huge response for people wanting information about this scheme. So we've decided to put on these 3 events as a method to disseminate information promptly to interested parties. We can go on to the next slide, Mel. Mel's my glamorous assistant today. Lovely. So the funding pot has come from the UK Shared Prosperity Funding for the Mid Wales region, and it's part of the Mid Wales plan that is being delivered separately within Powys and Ceredigion. As a way of background to the scheme, some of you may recall that with the previous round of Shared Prosperity Funding, it wasn't hugely accessible for third sector local groups on the ground. Because the levels of funding were so high. So as a result of this, the evidence we gained from groups saying that, you know, this is not accessible for us, we made an application to the fund in order for us to be able to deliver a grant scheme so that groups like yourselves could access the funding at a local level. And this particular grant scheme falls under the pillar of communities and place. Lovely. So what does communities and place actually mean and look like? It's about empowering places to identify and build on their own strengths, bear with me a minute, and needs at a local level, focused on pride in place and increasing life chances. It seeks to restore a sense of community, local pride and belonging, especially in those places where they have been lost. So any grant application, we would be looking for some aspect of that to be covered within the project. Thank you, Mel. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. This is why you're all here. This is a revenue-only fund, so no capital funding is permitted within any of within the application process. The level of grants available are between £4,000 and £40,000, and the total fund value that we have is £450,000. Obviously, the first application window is now open with the launch that we've done on Monday, and the deadline for this particular round is the 25th of September, which is a Monday at 5 p.m. So there are 2 options really. There is funding available for up to 2 years. The first year projects will run between October 2023 and March 2024. And then the second year projects would run for the same time period, plus running from April 24 to November 2024. I must hasten to add as a caveat that this is subject to UK government approval for the second tranche of funding. And obviously it is dependent on whether there is still a second application window may be, let me start again. We may well have a second application window later in the year, depending on there being sufficient funding available. Just to clarify, if you were thinking of applying for a 2-year project, there must be a difference between your year 1 project and your year 2 project. So not just a continuation of the year 1 activities. So a couple of examples, and this isn't exhaustive, it's just to give you a flavour of what you might be thinking about. So your first year funding could be for a pilot project, with your second year funding looking at a full project. Or you could have a feasibility study in year 1, and then year 2, you could have a pilot project to test that feasibility study findings. But as I say, that is not, it's not the whole range of what you could actually do, but just to clarify, there must be a difference between the year's activities. So what are we actually looking for in the projects? New projects primarily. We're looking for good projects that evidence community participation in design and delivery. This is really key. It's essential that your community, whether it's a geographical community or a community of interest, is actually involved in the design and delivery and the inputs into the need for the project. We'll be expecting, if you're applying for further development for existing projects or services, this will have to be very clearly explained. But all projects will have to demonstrate how you will seek to sustain projects, whether they're newly set up or extended existing services and activities. And all the projects will have to address the key challenges identified within the Mid Wales Regional Investment Plan, and we will send that document to you. So eligibility for the fund. The fund is open to constituted organisations where all objects permit the proposed project initiative. That might sound like it's really obvious, but we have had incidences where organisations have applied to PAVO for funding. We've checked their governing document, and the proposed project does not fall within what they are permitted to deliver. So we would, encourage you to just double check that. Any organisation should have a bank account with 2 unrelated signatories. Organisations must be based in or working in Powys. We know of several organisations who work across the border. Where projects have beneficiaries outside the county, such beneficiaries can only be a small proportion of those reached or engaged with by the project. If you aren't a constituted organisation as yet, please do contact us and we can discuss some options with you. Lovely, thanks, Mel. So in terms of criteria, the priorities are communities in place, community transport, cultural heritage and tourism, climate action, cost of living, and connecting communities, and that's digitally or otherwise. And as I mentioned before, any proposed project should contribute to the delivery of the Mid Wales Regional Investment Plan. There are several headings within that. We wouldn't expect all projects to contribute to all of those, but we would encourage you to look at that document, and we will send that with the presentation after the meeting. Thanks, Mel. Development officer support is a fundamental part of this fund. Much like if any of you have applied to the Social Value Fund, it's the same kind of process. So any applicant must engage with the support available from the fund's development officer prior to the submission of an application. So just to say, the officer can help to identify initial project ideas, provide support around how to sustain new or extended existing services and activities, support to ensure the governance requirements of the scheme are met, and also support to check over the applications before submission. And if you are going to apply to the fund, I would strongly encourage you to do that in a timely fashion, not the day of the deadline, which you'd be surprised how often that actually happens. But it does, we can provide a fresh pair of eyes and hopefully ensure that your application is in the strongest position it can be. Obviously, all of this does come with a caveat. Development officer support does not guarantee that you will be funded, because at the end of the day, it's a competitive grant scheme, but we will do our utmost to ensure that your application is strong as it can be. Okay, so just to talk you through the application form, what to expect. It's a long application form. That's partly due to the requirements of the funder from us. But we've also put the guidelines within the application form, so there aren't 2 separate documents. And we've done that so that they're there to assist you when you are filling in the application form. So please read the guidelines very carefully. They're there to help you and assist you as you go through the document. So there'll be sections on the priorities that are going to be met by the project and how, what your project outcomes will be. There's the need for a full project description and timetable for delivery. There'll be a section about who your project beneficiaries are going to be. Another section on evidence of need and community support. And again, I can't stress how important that particular section is. Project sustainability, how are you going to sustain the project once the funding ceases? And what difference is your project going to make? Who's going to benefit? What's changed as a result of this funding? There's a finance section with project costs, and I would please ensure that your project costs are broken down sufficiently to show the panel how you've reached those figures. And there will be further guidance in the application form that shows you how to do this. And then the final section is on due diligence, and that's about the essential documents and supporting information we'll be expecting to receive from you. So in terms of once you've done all that, to the actual assessment of the applications, as a part of our role as a grant funder, as a grant fund administrator as well, we undertake due diligence checks on every application and supporting documents that we receive. There are a number of essential documents with the scheme that we will expect to receive. If we don't receive all of them, the application won't go forward to panel. So what I would say is please check very, very carefully that you have sent the documentation you have said you're going to send. If some of these documents your organisation hasn't got some of these documents, we can support you to put those in place before you submit your application as well. So please do get in touch if you're aware that this is going to be an issue, and we'll do our best to support you. And just to say, if you've had a PAVO grant previously and there have been concerns about how the fund has been managed, that will also be brought to the attention of the panel. We've had, we have to make sure that public money is allocated and delivered efficiently.
I'm muted.
I've got you in a meeting.
Lovely. So if you're successful, fingers crossed, the payment of the grant will be staggered. If you're applying for a 1-year project, you'll receive 60% upfront, and then the remaining 40% after your monitoring and evaluation has been returned to PAVO in a timely fashion. If you're applying for 2-year funding, you'll receive 40% upfront. You'll receive 35% at the start of the 2nd year following successful return of monitoring, and then 25% at the end of the project, again subject to to us receiving sufficient monitoring and you've met your expectations in terms of that. So that's just to give you a flavour of what's going to happen. With all of our grant schemes, we are implementing a monitoring and evaluation meeting with any grant recipients to make sure you're aware of what's required with the particular fund. And you'll also have to sign and return a funding agreement that sets out the expectations. And both of those are done before any funding payment is triggered. If you're unsuccessful, you can ask for feedback, and you can also request support from PAVO Development Officer. Lovely. So we have got a new development officer starting for the fund, but they're not in place yet. So in the meantime, I'm your contact for the Making a Difference in Powys fund. If, having heard everything I've said this afternoon and mulling it over, thinking, yes, this is a fund I think we can apply to, please can you email me with a description of your project. Doesn't have to be realms and realms. I just want to make sure that the project will fit the criteria. We don't want organisations spending hours on an application that isn't going to meet the criteria, because it is a time-consuming process. So that would be great if you can do that, and then I'll be in touch with you and send you the application form. That really felt like a whistle-stop tour. Are there many questions in the chat, Melissa?
Only a couple, but people have got time to type if they have any burning ones.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
If you could just confirm in terms, someone's asked in terms of sharing the full guidelines and application form.
Yeah.
So just to kind of reiterate that point, that as soon as you had a project description, that those will be sent.
Absolutely.
We'll also be sending the presentation slides, the link to the investment plan, as well as the recording of the session. Someone has asked, has said that the total fund value isn't that big over 2 years, so the assumption is that it's going to be super competitive. And should one consider an application to the wider Powys grant scheme?
I suppose that depends on what your project is and what you want to do. More than happy to have a conversation with whoever talked about that, but it is going to be a competitive process. We can't get away from that fact. You know, grant funding is a competitive process, no matter which fund it is. Yeah.
Can community councils apply?
Yes, they can, as long as there's genuine community need for the project.
Lauren, don't worry, we'll send it to you as well. Will you be accepting collaborative bids, and if so, would there need to be lead organisations, or can it be as an equal partnership?
More than happy to encourage collaborative bids. That's fantastic in terms of thinking about one of the challenges is climate and that sort of stuff, you know, net zero. So I think it depends on the organisations involved in the partnership, but more than happy to have a conversation about that.
Is it possible to go for a project in year 2 if we're not ready for year 1?
We are hoping that there will be a second round, but obviously that will be dependent on funding being available.
Does the investment plan go into further details about the ambitions and each priority, e.g. priorities for tourism, priorities for climate action?
The investment plan talks about the key challenges and some opportunities within it. There is more detail about it in that document, and we will send that out.
It's broken down into each section as well, so it's really clear.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's a really well written document. Yeah.
Do you have more information about evidence of need?
More than happy to have a conversation about evidence of need and what that looks like and how to get it.
How much information do you need for the pre-application email?
Just a paragraph, what you're planning to do, how you think it'll meet the priorities, and you know, we can have a conversation. That's fine. I'm not expecting you to write essays. That's not fair. It's just to make sure that you will meet the criteria and you fit the eligibility, so that we're not wasting your time. We know how precious voluntary time is. So yeah.
Can you do 1 or 2 things, smaller things within the total project?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's the decision date for the first round?
Ooh, off the top of my head, I can't remember. It's looking for projects to start sometime in October.
And that's answered the last question in terms of project start dates.
Yeah, there'll be sometime in October, mid to late October, I think it is. So yeah, obviously that's dependent. If you are successful in getting funding, you know, you need to make sure that you attend the meeting and send the document back so that we can trigger payment as soon as possible.
Can you expand on what you define as revenue funding, such as paying for services compared to capital, which is buying goods?
Yeah, capital is basically equipment, isn't it? Kitchen items, that sort of thing. Revenue, running costs, staff costs, insurance, that type of thing. So sort of the funding behind the activities.
Does the work in year 1 have to be completed by the end of March 24?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Is it still a fund that doesn't fund activities, but rather feasibility or at best action learning?
It can fund both. It can, if you want to do a feasibility study, that would be permitted within the grant scheme. If you want to run activities, that's permitted too.
Can it include paying contractors?
Sorry?
Can it include paying contractors?
I mean, your project costs, that's what you would detail in your within your finance section. Obviously, it depends on what those contractors are doing.
Can it fund activities only?
Yes.
Is there a maximum organisational turnover for eligibility?
No.
If we're to employ someone over 2 years, how would this work?
Well, obviously, the first year funding is guaranteed as long as you're successful. Obviously, second year funding, you know, there's a rider on it, subject to UK government approving it. So it may, you know, everything's crossed that they won't change things, but just to make you aware of that.
Is there any last burning question? Because we're out in the chat.
Feels like mastermind.
Doesn't it like it? It did feel like a quick fire round, didn't it, in terms of the questions?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, no, they're really useful questions, and it's probably helpful if we put those into an FAQ as well. So thank you for those questions. Those are the sorts of things that we can put into a document for others. So that's really helpful. As we said, Janet, the application form will be sent out if you are planning to apply to the scheme. If you send us your project idea, and then we'll do that, rather than we really don't want groups to apply to a fund that isn't suitable for them, because it is time consuming.
No, it's just that sometimes it's helpful to get an idea of how to do everything, if you can see an application form in advance of deciding whether you're going to apply at all.
Yeah.
But you have to have a conversation with you first. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Fine. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any burning questions on this Friday afternoon? Anybody thinking, yeah, that ticks our boxes? As I said, Kath, it is a long form. But that is because the funders, they have certain requirements they want from us in terms of collecting information. We have due diligence requirements that we have to fill in, but we have put the guidelines within the application form, so you haven't got two separate documents. We have had feedback that was an issue, and you know, it is what it is, I'm afraid. We've tried to make it as straightforward as possible, but yeah. And you're a pro at filling in application forms anyway, Kat.
Is it done online though?
No, it's a Word document.
Oh, thank God for that.
That's feedback we've had as well. So yeah, no, it's a Word document.
Offline application.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As I say, you won't be wasting my time. This is what I'm going to be doing. So more than happy to have a conversation if before you send in a project description, if you want, or you want to send in a project description, just get in touch with me.
Can I just speak? Is that okay? Yeah, I don't mean to be pedantic, but it's just like we did apply for SSP or whatever it was called, and it was incredibly confusing. And also on my kind of list of things that we're looking to develop, it's like I would rather look at the form first and see which project this might fit with. And I guess a lot of organizations are like that they, before speaking to you, because you know, I guess we've got several projects that we're interested in moving forward, but and I guess a lot of organizations are also good at sort of understanding what you know, the eligibility with your criteria, because there's such big generic kind of success criteria in this, and they're the same as SSP, aren't they? So it would just be like
slightly different.
more kind of granular information, because if the deadline's the 25th of September, it's quite short for everyone on in this call and all the other calls to have a chat with you before the deadline.
Okay, so but if we send the application form out, you must let me know if you're going to apply for it. Yeah.
100%. I think I would definitely speak to you if we then thought, yes, definitely this project we want to take forward. I think I'm not just speaking for myself, hopefully I'm speaking for a few other people that just, yeah, it's like you make those decisions as you kind of go along and then speak to the funder.
But would it be possible to
so-
put it online? Can you?
Well, we'd rather send it direct to people, because we found that works better for us. But I'm more than happy to email it out to you. But I would ask, if you are thinking of applying, and please do get in touch with me. As part of the process is that you engage with the officer. So more than happy to send the application form out, but with that caveat that you must get in touch with me if you are thinking of applying, having looked at that, just so we can double check.
I think that would be extremely helpful. Yeah, and it sounds as though Susie would find it helpful too.
Yeah, is that okay with everybody else? It might be that you look at the form and you think, nah, not for us.
Yeah, well,
but please do encourage.
Yeah.
My calendar's booked on Monday because it's a bank holiday, Nick.
Just to say, to refer to the priority areas as well, because they're there. So if you know against one of the priority areas that's a bid you want to put in, then you're already kind of partway there in terms of the criteria.
Can I ask a question?
So we'll send. Yes, absolutely, Pete.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you further about community consultation, and whether you're looking at formal mechanisms for that, or whether you just want general proof. Because, I mean, for instance, in some of the the lottery applications, the big lottery, you need to demonstrate, that you've done community consultation over maybe 2 or 3 different areas, not just questionnaires, but focus groups and God knows what else. So I didn't know what you meant by community consultation.
We need to know that you've done your homework and that that it's not a top-down approach. It's something that people have said, we need this within our community. So whatever mechanisms you use to do that should be fine, but it's always helpful to do more than one mechanism. Okay. What organisation are you with, Pete?
It's Joseph Herman.
Yeah. Okay, so you might have an open afternoon where people can come and you can talk to people, or you might do an online survey. Just so long as that provides you have actually consulted. It's not you saying, well, we want to do this. Okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
Anybody else?
You stated that the groups can apply for amounts between 4,000 and 40,000. Would a 3,000 scheme be eligible?
No, it's got to be 4,000 and over.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Am I going to be inundated with emails? I hope so. It's a fabulous opportunity. I know that we haven't, in terms of a year's funding, it's not a calendar year, but that's, with best will in the world, when these things are put into process, there's always a delay and so on and so forth. But it is an opportunity to do some real community stuff, which I'm sure you're all very good at. Anybody else got any questions, any observations? Have you found today useful? I do hope so. I managed not to get too tongue-tied.
Actually, I've got a question.
Yeah.
So I part of a forum with lots of different community groups, some of which are charities, some of which are constituted groups. I don't know if there's any non-constituted groups in there, but I'm assuming not. I don't know. But I just wondered if the charity applying was a member of a national charity, you know, say something UK or whatever, would that be okay that they're doing this?
As long as the project is delivered within Powys.
Okay. Right. So, for example, if the funds were going to the national office of the charity, then that wouldn't really be eligible.
Well, that would be, you know, that's an arrangement with the national fund to make sure they get that project funding.
Yes, so they wouldn't be eligible then, really. If it was, say, a research charity, a health research charity, for example, so all the funds goes to national.
Yeah, no, the project has to be delivered within Powys.
Yeah, okay, got you. Thank you.
All right.
One last question in the chat. Would we be able to get supporting document approval by PAVO prior to submitting applications?
Yes, in fact, we'd probably encourage that. Yeah, but like I say, if you need any support with the due diligence requirements, please do get in touch with us at the earliest opportunity. Most of the documents are about good practice. It's just making sure they're in place to safeguard people and make sure the organisation's safeguarded as well. So it might seem like a bit of a oh, what do we want this for? It's good practice. It's about increasing capacity and sharing good practice. So do get in touch with us about that at the earliest opportunity if it is an issue. Julie, did you want to say something? No, anybody else want to say anything? Okay, so the type of support documents, I wrote this down because I knew we'd be asked. So we need your governing document, your latest published accounts, a bank statement from the last 6 months, financial controls policy, conflict of interest policy, public liability insurance, and safeguarding policy. Those are the essential documents that we need for every organisation that's applying. And that's contained within the application form. So you'll be able to look at that when we send the documents out after the meeting. There may be other documents that apply if your organisation employs staff. We'd expect to see employer liability insurance, but obviously that's not going to apply to everybody. But it's very clear on the application form what we're expecting from you. Anybody else? Any last burning questions, observations, thoughts? Everybody got my email address down? You've had it anyway because I've sent the link to you. So I look forward to turning my computer on Tuesday morning. Well, I hope you found it really useful. It's just a really useful way to disseminate information quickly. And thank you for your suggestions about the application form. Can appreciate where you're coming from with that. So we'll send you the application form, the PowerPoint, and the shared prosperity document that we referred to in the presentation. And huge thank you to Mel for doing such a marvellous job on the tech and the chat. And have a lovely bank holiday weekend. I hope the sun shines at some point for you. I'm not holding my breath, but there we are. And I look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
See you.
Bye.
Yeah, we'll look recorded.